Chris Columbus is here. For the past decade, he's been regarded as the billion-dollar director. He had blockbusters such as Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire, but he raised the bar last year when he directed Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. It earned $967 million at the box office, making it the second highest grossing film of all time. This Friday, he hopes to recapture that success and that magic with the next installment, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. And here is the trailer.
The struggle for the future of Hogwarts will begin. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Let us hope Mr. Potter will always be around to save the day. Don't worry, I will be.
Pleased to welcome Chris Columbus here for the first time at this table, something that I've looked forward to, so welcome.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks.
Really a pleasure.
Oh, it's great to be here.
The day you met Harry Potter must have been a great day in your life.
Well, my daughter, Eleanor, constantly said, Dad, you've got to read this book. And I said, no, I don't want to read it. It's a kid's book. I don't have any interest in that. And it took her about 8 weeks, and I finally picked up the book, read it, and fell in love with it, and said, I have to make this into a film. Now, I called my agent and found out that Steven Spielberg also had the same idea, and he was toying with it at the time. So I said to her, I don't want to think about it. If Spielberg's going to do it, it's not even a possibility. So I didn't think about it for about 6 weeks, and then he passed. And then I was called into Warner Brothers for a meeting, but it was some sort of bake-off. There were about 8 to 10 other directors also interested. And basically, I got the job because I said to my agent, I want to be the last person that they interview. And I spent 8 days rewriting the script. Just not because Steve Kloves did a brilliant job, but I wanted them to see visually how I would do it. So I stayed up till 2 in the morning rewriting the script. I knew if they didn't hire me, I wouldn't get paid for this, but I wanted them to see what sort of passion I had. So I went in and I put the script on the table and I said, this is how I see Harry Potter. And it took them about 5 weeks, but I did get the job.
Yeah.
So.
Was there any conversation in between then, or was it simply by that time they had read it, they said, I mean, did they come back to you and say, why did you do it this way? Why did you do it that way? What's the process that takes place between the time that you make your pitch and the time they say 5 weeks later, you got the job?
Oh, I don't think they ever read it. They probably never, they never read it, and I think they...
But it said something to them anyway.
It said that I had an intense passion to do the material, and it probably said to them that my vision, whatever that is, gelled with Joe Rowling's vision.
Yeah.
And then I was sent to Scotland to meet with Joe.
And why did you want to do it? What was it about Harry Potter that you said at first glance, wow?
I was actually, as a filmmaker, I started to feel, I don't want to say bored with the job, but I was working with these brilliant actors, people like Susan Sarandon, Julia Roberts, Robin Williams.
Stepmom, yeah.
And I basically was sitting in a director's chair, watching these performances. You watch Susan Sarandon, you walk to her and you say, Susan, can you bring it down a little bit? And you go sit in your chair. And I felt I was getting stale, artistically stale. I read Harry Potter and I felt like I did as a writer back in the early 80s. I felt that intense hunger again. I thought, I can turn this into some sort of interactive form of filmmaking where I can be an active participant. By hiring these kids who aren't accomplished actors, I can get in there and act with them. And basically, it was almost like acting school. Turn these kids into actors. And that was the passion behind it. Aside from the material, which was, was one of the greatest books I'd ever read.
What's she like?
She's great. She's funny. She's into, rock and roll. I'm very much into rock and roll. She loves the Clash. She loves punk rock. She's got a wicked sense of humor, and she really functioned as a collaborator. She was immediately when we started to talk about the kind of film I wanted to make, she said, that's the exact same type of film I'd like to see.
It was her call.
It was, I didn't know it at the time, but as I was flying out to meet her, I thought, oh, wait a second, she probably has some say in
She
this.
has a final vote here, yeah. If she doesn't like you, they're not going to go forward.
Probably not. I would have been back on a plane to San Francisco.
Yeah, and the meeting went well.
Meeting went incredibly well. It was one of the more difficult meetings before I met with her. And as soon as we started talking and laughing and actually talking about the kind of movie I wanted to make, we were completely in sync.
And is the movie you made that made $97 million the movie that you wanted to make?
Almost. Could have been better. Could have been better.
How so?
Visual effects, we didn't have enough time. We had a wonderful team, but we had 3 months to do the visual effects. So on Chamber of Secrets, we shot all of those sequences early, giving us 9 months to do the visual effects, which meant sequences where the visual effects characters, the CGI characters, were better integrated into the actual, the sequences between the actors. The actors are better in the second film. I just felt that we had reached a point where Dan Radcliffe particularly was feeling a lot more confidence and self-assurance, and you see that in his performance in this film.
Did you feel pressure? It's tough enough to make one. Mm-hmm. Some say it's twice as hard to repeat success.
Well, I certainly wouldn't admit that I felt pressure. Like, you think of yourself as an athlete or something, that you're not going to feel pressure in these moments.
Give me the ball.
Because if you're going to feel pressure, if you start thinking about it, I think it'll suffocate you and basically stifle you artistically. When we got into the second film, which was, we started shooting 3 days after Sorcerer's Stone opened, I realized at the time that there was a certain sense of relief. We had opened the film had done well at the box office. The kids and myself, started to feel a sense of relief. The author trusted us, the studio trusted us. Then we started to make the film we really wanted to make. We started to improvise a little more. We started to have more fun with the material.
Yeah. Tell me what the appeal is. I mean, for those who have neither read a book by Rowling or did not see the movie and maybe didn't read the Time magazine cover stories and all the reams of publicity. Mm-hmm. Tell me who Harry Potter is and why it is so phenomenally successful.
I think it taps into the basic idea. Look, I look at myself as a kid when I was growing up in Ohio, when I was 11 years old. I would have given anything to get a letter from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry saying, I'm going to take you out of this dreary existence.
Exactly.
I'm going to let you escape from this life. Basically, at its heart, these books give people a sense of hope. And you can be 8 years old and feel that. You can be 10 or 11. Particularly for kids, it gives them a sense of empowerment, of hope, saying, you can do something different with your life. Combine that with a great sense of imagination and adventure.
That is such a strain in the American experience, and this is written by a British author, but the American experience, I mean, that explains to me the success of religion. It explains to me the success of self-help. Mm-hmm. It explains to me the success of people who somehow resonate with the public is through whatever it is, they speak to hope.
Exactly. And at this point, particularly in this point in our lives, we need a sense of hope. Yeah. And these books and these films strive to give the audience that sort of sense of hope.
And did it do what you wanted it to do? Challenge all of your creative juices, all the reasons that you were getting a little bit bored watching very talented people make your job easy?
It did. It was an exhausting experience in one sense because you were in there physically. When they send, if Rupert and Dan, Ron and Harry are doing a scene together, they'll send Ron to school for an hour, which means Harry needs a Ron while I would step in and become Ron for Dan. When he's fighting the basilisk at the end of the movie, I'm in there, every move, swinging with him. And I felt that was an important thing to do because it was, as I said, it was an interactive form of filmmaking. I was actually out there with these kids, teaching them the nuances of acting, from what I knew. Not that I'm not saying I'm Lee Strasberg. I'm just saying that I was able to help them and make them better actors. And I felt if I could give them that experience, it would be a great experience for them.
You once said some time ago that you make films for an audience. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can take that at first glance and say, of course you do, but you mean something deeper than that when you say, in the end, I make movies for an audience. Meaning what?
Meaning that I have to trust my own instincts as an audience member. I made a couple of films which were based on my own personal experiences that really didn't reach out to the audience as much. When I go see a film that I've finished, the ultimate test is that Friday when it opens, and you're sitting there with all of these people who've paid their money to see the film. You're sitting in the middle of the audience, and they don't know that I've had anything to do with it. And I watch them, I listen to them, and I realize that I'm still in sync with what they like. And that's the key. I have to entertain myself as well as the other people in the audience. And you know what? Movies are very expensive. It's, aside from the cost of making films, to take your family out to the theater to see a film is a very expensive proposition. And if there's not a sense of satisfaction afterwards, if there's not a sense that you've seen something special,
that has taken you somewhere.
That's taken you somewhere, that has made you forget
Yeah.
your life
Right.
for 2.5 hours, then I feel like I haven't done my job. And I felt that way on occasion, but not in
In
this
terms of
case.
movies you made.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll sit in the audience and I'll say to myself, this isn't working for the audience the way I want it to work.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing, it can be okay, but it's not where you wanted it to be.
Exactly. Okay is never good enough. It's got to be, you know, you ultimately want people to say, that was one of the greatest experiences of my life. Now, obviously not everyone's going to say that, but if you can unite people every now and then, it's nice. It's nice.
All right, let me take a look at some of these scenes. This is Harry Potter being attacked by a rogue during a Quidditch match. Here it is.
Training for the ballet, Potter!
Someone once said about you that they didn't know that you had developed a visual style. I don't know if you read that or not.
Oh, yeah. I've read it all.
A, does it resonate with you? Do you think there's a point there, and are you, in your own mind, getting to that point, or do you want to get to that point?
I think I want to get to that point. It's very simple. I don't want the visual style to overtake the story. For me, I started out as a writer. I still write every day, if possible. And to me, sometimes the visual style can get in the way of the story. And I want the film to work as an experience. I don't want people thinking about the type of shot that I did. I want them to be. I want them to lose themselves in the movie.
Lose themselves. Yeah. Who influenced you the most? I mean, who are the people that when you knew that you were going to make a transition from writing to making films, influenced you? Whose style? Whose technique? Whose poetic vision resonated with you?
I mean, it was a combination of it was an odd summer when I saw a re-release of The Godfather. So it was Francis Coppola, and the release of Blazing Saddles by Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
Two completely different films, but both films took me to a place that I had never been to in all the years of watching other films. So then I just got hungry for it. I originally was going to be I wanted to be a comic book artist. I wanted to move to New York City and draw Spider-Man comics.
Yeah.
And I realized I'd be sitting alone in a room for 16 hours a day. I wanted to work with people.
Of course, you'd be very rich by now.
I guess so, yeah. I guess
You know, if you own the movie rights. Yeah.
But I did, and seeing those early comics that I was drawing alone in my room, I realized, well, this is basically a blueprint for a film.
Right.
Basically storyboards for films. So I just became hungry. I wanted to learn about film. And someone said to me, well, the best place to become a director, actually it was a priest at my high school, said, there's a film school, a place called a film school where you can actually go and learn how to become a director. And I found the film school that was closest to Ohio, which was New York University.
Yeah.
And I
One of the
accepted.
best.
Yeah. It was terrific.
Casting, first Kenneth Branagh. Here was a guy who had an interesting career, first made him a reputation because of Shakespeare and what he did there. Then he had some other kinds of roles, of which there were some failures in the last few years.
Right.
Your instinct to go with him because?
We had sort of set the bar fairly high in terms of actors in the first Harry Potter film. We had Maggie Smith and Richard Harris,
Yes.
Alan Rickman, and you have that sort of cast.
Yes,
You have people who lose themselves in these roles, and they actually become the characters for anyone who's watching the films. There was some talk originally, the studio was pushing for Hugh Grant. They wanted Hugh to be Gilderoy Lockhart. Now, Hugh's a wonderful actor, but I felt that it would feel as if a celebrity, a superstar, was suddenly walking into the world of Harry Potter. I needed an actor who I felt could lose himself in the role. And we were struggling with it. I didn't know. In fact, at one point, the crew had made this huge poster board with pictures of themselves with blonde wigs, all saying, we can all play this particular role. We were killing ourselves trying to find the right person. Went home that night, and my wife said, what about Kenneth Branagh? And it occurred to me, I haven't seen him on screen in a few years, and he's an amazing actor. I remembered Much Ado About Nothing, and I remember that performance, and I thought, he might be the guy. So I met with Ken, and he was perfect. He was immediately perfect. He tapped into Lockhart in a way that no one else did. He prevented him from being a cartoon version of that character. He turned him into a realistic character.
I saw something this week where Woody Allen says he watches 1 or 2 movies every week, regardless. Whether they're good or bad, and many of them might be bad. Do you watch a lot of movies?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you...
And you're going to school and you're looking for things as you watch them, or you just sort of want to be absorbed by the experience, and if there is something that is so striking, you'll get it anyway.
Exactly. I was always fascinated just by the stories. I wanted to find a film. Every time I go to the movies, I want to find a film where I can lose myself in the story. And in order to do that, you need to lose yourself in the performances, the art direction, the cinematography, and it all merges together. I never sit back and watch it from a distance, from a technical point of view. And that's probably, probably why sometimes people criticize my supposed lack of styles, because I'm so interested in stories.
And because you're putting yourself in the seats of the audience, too.
You are. I basically want to be a storyteller. I want people to remember the stories.
Okay. One more here. This is where Alan Rickman, who I did an interview, 6 months ago with Alan Rickman. He's got an audience out there because he was so good on in this conversation. I got more email about it saying, please rerun it, please rerun it. We've heard about it. Because he came here and he was so flat out interesting and honest that he's one of the people that if I'm asked the question, who was one of the big surprises on this show, it's Alan Rickman. Roll tape, here he is.
1, 2.
Inverte status! Richter Sempra!
What's the hardest thing about this, making Harry Potter movies, whether it's one or two?
I think really it's the actors, getting the actors, particularly these kids, to focus on things that aren't there, because they're accustomed to...
Living in the moment?
Living in the moment, and basically, for much of this film, Daniel Radcliffe is reacting to a little green ball on the end of a stick.
The famous tennis ball, yeah.
Because we have this character, Dobby, who's a completely CGI, computer-generated character, and Dan's focus is really what makes those scenes work.
Yeah.
And to get those kids to focus and concentrate is
Tell me, how did they find him, and what does he bring to this character?
Well, Dan, there was this nationwide sort of search, obviously, worldwide search, and people were sending in videotapes, and we had a casting director in London who was getting pretty frustrated with me. She said, we need to find a Harry Potter. She was feeling pressure from the studio, and I was consistently saying no. I had seen David Copperfield on BBC. Dan played the young David Copperfield, and I fell in love with his performance, and I thought, this is Harry Potter. So one day the casting director said to me, I don't know what you want anymore. I really don't know what you want. I picked up the David Copperfield video cassette, and I said, this is who I want. This, to me, is Harry Potter. She said, you're never going to get him. His parents don't want him to do the film. As a result of that, she resigned. She was completely frustrated. We hired a new casting director. Ironically, our producer, David Heyman, was at the theater sitting in front of Dan and his father. At intermission, David approached Dan's father and Dan and said, look, we really have a lot of respect for parents, and we'd like you to come in for a meeting. So they felt comfortable enough to come in for the first meeting. And I told them in that first meeting, I said, look, part of this is casting the parents. I've learned my lesson in the past. I had done some films with children in the past, and it hadn't worked out well for these kids in the future. And I felt a tremendous amount of responsibility for these kids. And our goal was to cast the parents as well and say to the parents, you need to be responsible for your kids. You can't let this experience basically go to their heads. They cannot feel that being on a movie set or going to a premiere or being interviewed is the most important thing in their lives. They need to know that it's not reality. And Dan's parents were very taken with that attitude. Yeah. And they agreed finally to let him do the film.
But you can imagine yourself doing 5?
I can imagine myself doing 4, the 4th book, possibly. It depends on where, I'm planning to move back to the United States at some point, so it depends on whether or not I want to bring my entire family back to London.
So as long as you're making Harry Potter, you're going to live in London, because it's an all-British cast, and you shoot it over there on Pinewood or wherever you shot it. But.
Yeah, I think it's important to shoot the pictures in London, and I also think it's important to use an all-British cast. It's not something, it's one of the first things I said.
Because
the books themselves are so quintessentially British,
right.
And it's the first thing I said to Joe Rowling. I don't want, we don't want to get a kid from America doing a phony British accent. It never works. And I just felt, even a lot of seasoned stars, it's very difficult for them to pull off the accent. So I just felt it was important for the integrity of the material to cast an all-British cast.
Richard Harris,
Yeah.
who died, what, a month ago. Remember him for us.
Richard was truly the most honest man I've ever met in show business. And he's burned a lot of bridges. He has burned a lot of bridges by being so painfully honest. He despises Hollywood. He despises a lot of actors. He'll say it in interviews. Yet at the same time, that honesty sort of built a bridge between the two of us, because I found him tremendously funny and one of the great senses of humor. Mischievous as hell. Really mischievous as hell. And I really can't think of anyone else playing Dumbledore. It's very difficult to think.
Yeah, that's
that
a tough one for you in the third one.
Yeah, it's an impossible thing to think about, because I only see Richard as Dumbledore.
When do you think about the third one? Now, or
Yeah,
do you
I think it's probably now. I mean, we go back. Alfonso Cuarón, our new director, has been working on the film for a few months, and we'll start to work on the script and some storyboards and conceptual art, and we'll get back into it.
Do you view each one with enthusiasm? I mean, can you say to yourself, boy, I'm about ready to start the third Harry Potter? Or do you say, this is a great gig, it's time for me to, to gear up one more time? There's a difference there, as you know.
There is a difference, and that's why I'm not directing. That is why I'm not directing the third, because my sense of energy and enthusiasm and what I can bring to these kids on the set wouldn't be the same in the third film. I just couldn't physically and emotionally give as much as I've given.
What's it going to be like for them? I mean, they're attached to you.
I'll be there. I told them I would be there as a sort of a godfather overlooking this transition.
But does that make it difficult for the other director?
Well, I'm not going to get in his way. In the same way
because
that
you've been a director.
I've been a director, and I had that sense of support from the studio, from the author, where I was free to basically make the kind of movie I wanted, and I want Alfonso to feel that sort of freedom. But I don't want screaming on the set. I don't want it to be a situation where these kids feel uncomfortable.
How has all this changed you? This involvement with a hugely successful film, which I assume made a lot of money for you, and at the same time, it gives you options. It gives you learning experience. I mean, where does it send you? How are you different now that you've done two of these and you're about ready to produce a third?
I think you probably you feel good about the fact that you've reached a big audience. You feel confident, which can be a good and a bad thing. The thing you have to remember about a certain amount of success is, I've seen it happen with directors, it's like rock and roll stars. They've learned from Elvis Presley. So you see what Elvis did wrong and you don't do it. I've learned from a lot of other directors what not to do. Don't freeze.
Tell me what you learned. I mean, like other directors, without mentioning specifically, you learned don't freeze.
Freezing
don't stop where you are in your career.
Well, yeah, I mean,
don't do the same.
And Jim Cameron, who I love as a director, has not made a film since Titanic. Now, I wouldn't be the person to say maybe Jim feels he needs to do something as big, but I don't want to get into that situation, because I feel that making film after film after film, like Steven Spielberg, whether they always work or they don't work, is an important thing, because you get better with each film. You learn your craft. If you look at some of the great directors, John Ford, Howard Hawks, the films that you really remember, films like The Searchers from John Ford, or The Quiet Man, you look at those films, but if you look at the body of work, there were 30 films before it that you've never heard of. Those guys were able to practice their craft, and I think it's important that I continue to do that. So it hasn't really changed me. I just want to make films, that, as I said earlier, that work for the audience, and I basically get much more depressed, and I feel I haven't done my job if the film doesn't work.
Yeah. But are you likely now, let's assume it's only 3 for you, and maybe you produce the 4th, but so are you more likely to turn to something dramatically different from this? I mean, in the same way that an actor who just came, you remember how after Dustin Hoffman did way back when, The Graduate, he turned right and did Midnight Cowboy, a dramatically different piece.
Right.
Do you have any hunger to do something dramatically different from this, whether it's either comedy or drama or whatever it might be, or dramatically different now that you've reached this plateau from anything you've ever done in your life?
There's no question. I haven't found it yet, but I think it needs to be different, because it will be the thing that will inspire me to do something, to do another film. You need to do something different in order to move forward.
This movie, is it more of the film you set out to make because you learned from the first, or about the same? Whatever film you make will never be quite there because of all the circumstances. Like no interview will be quite there because of all the circumstances.
Right. This is as close as I could hope for with
Really?
Chamber of
Yeah.
Secrets. From a visual effects point of view, I'm extremely happy with 98% of the visual effects in the film. But you need about a year. You need about a year or 8 months to sit back and look at the film again, because you've grown, you've matured, and then you can say, well, I would do this differently. But at this point in my life, the way I feel right now, I'm extremely happy with this film.
Lord of the Rings, as you know, was made 2 movies at the same time. Could you have made 2 or 3 movies at one go?
I think it would have hurt. In terms of Harry Potter, it would have hurt the second film, because what we brought to it, we changed some key crew people, and we wanted to make a darker, edgier, slightly moodier film in the second time around. So I felt that by changing some key crew people, you would have a fresh outlook. It would be as if we were making a new film. Had we done 1, 2, and 3 back to back, they would all feel the same. And Chamber of Secrets and The Sorcerer's Stone, although linked together, feel like very different pictures at times.
It's fun to live in London?
I love London. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
The theater is amazing.
It is amazing. Isn't it?
It's remarkable.
I mean, just it is, it's a great city. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets opens nationwide on December 15th. Chris Columbus, thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks, Charlie.
Very much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.